Hi, good evening, friends and family. Well, tonight I'm going to be doing canning a beaver stew. Yes, you heard it, a beaver stew. A lot of my veteran friends that are from the country like my beaver stew, and they wanted to see how it was done. So just to get started, we're going to be doing it in pints. So I have some pints here. I have carrots, celery, onion, garlic, some chilies, some potatoes, fresh beaver meat, some kosher salt, and some homemade beef stew. It'll go into my canner, which will hold 8 of the pints, and it'll go for 75 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure, which is what I need for my area. So let's see how this is done. So first off, we take some of the beaver meat and we put it in the bottom. I find it's easier to do the meat in the bottom than in the top. So a fair amount of meat. Then we're going to add a few carrots to our jar, a few potatoes, some celery, one chunk of garlic, one chili pepper, a little bit of onion, a few more taters, a couple more carrots. You want to keep it to where there's about an inch of head space left in there. We don't want to overfill. And then that's how we will do all 8 pints. Yes, I went and got a beaver the other day from an area that's having some damage done. They called me up and asked me to come down and catch them. And I don't like things going to waste, so I butchered them up, making my stew. I'm canning it so we can have it whenever we want. I find this size is pretty good for just one person. Just heat it up on the stove. My beef stock is what I made a while back. Took some old beef bones from a steer that we butchered and put it in the Instapot and did it up, and it turned out really good. It works good for soups and this type of stuff. It's got good flavor. It's good for you. All the nutrients out of the bones. As you can see, I kind of skip around a little bit on the order of stuff, but as long as I get everything in there. Now these are all cold, so that means is the water in the pressure canner is room temperature. The jars were soap and water washed only. There's no need to sterilize them because they're going into the pressure canner for 75 minutes at my altitude here, which is about 500 feet, at 10 pounds of pressure. And that's what you do for raw meat. And so what we'll do is we'll put it in the canner and slowly bring it up to a pressure. Now I know there's a lot of people out there going, ooh, beaver meat, yuck. Well, you know, back in the day, the old fur trappers, the mountain men, They used to be a staple, and it's still a staple in some areas of the world, such as Alaska, in the backcountry. So don't turn your nose up to it until you try it. It's actually really good. Tastes almost like a pot roast. We will add a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt to each of these. And then we'll top it off, like I said, with the beef stock, and then make sure all the air bubbles are out. I got into canning a couple years ago, and I just love it. It's fun to do. It's a good way to preserve some of the vegetables that we grow in our garden. Being a veteran, it also gives me kind of a pastime hobby that keeps me going on those days when I get kind of bored. So there we are. There's 8 pints. I've got a few leftover things here. Like I said, we're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. In each one. I would say if you did a quart, you're probably going to use about a half. And I just do it where I can see, otherwise I'm going to make a mess. Do my beef stock. And what we're going to want to do when we're done is get the air bubbles out. Might have to get another can. Yep. That's the last of my homemade stuff, so I have to open up this store-bought stuff. Take away from some of the flavor because it's not as good as my homemade stuff, but it's still good. Alright, so what we're going to do now You don't want to use anything metal to get the air out. You're going to want to go down and around. Make sure all the air is out. We'll have to add a little bit more beef stock to this one. We're down an inch. You can see all of these are going down a little bit once I move it around and get some of the air out of the meat. I've already got my lids hot. I like getting them hot. They say you don't have to, but I always get them hot in some warm water or boiling water. That looks good. Now, right, so I told you we would wait till it started steaming. So what I'm doing now is anytime you get ready to can, it's a good idea to always take a little bit of vinegar and wipe the top of the jar off. What you're feeling for is imperfections in the glass. It may have been a chip from the last use, but the vinegar is also removing any of the oils or fats that stuck to the top when you put your stuff in there. And the reason you want to do that is because if there's oils or fats up there or food particles, it could potentially keep your jars from sealing. I like wide mouth jars because it's easier to get the stew out when it's time to eat. You can use regular mouth jars if you want. I'm just kind of all about making it easy. We put our rings on, just finger tight. That one just felt thicker than the rest. I thought maybe I had two stuck together. And then I'll go in the pressure canner. Remember I said everything is at room temperature because if we were to put cold jars into hot water, we would end up breaking our jars, or potentially breaking our jars. And we just don't want to do that. So it's going to happen now, as you can see. We got 8 jars in there in the water. What I'm going to do is put the lid on. Here's my lid. Look closely. There's an arrow right here on my lid that lines up there. Lines up there, and then you turn it where it clicks. I have a 10-pound weight. That will go on here once it stops venting, or vents for 10 minutes. High heat. And so what we're going to want to do is once we start getting steam coming out of here, we're going to let it vent for about 10 minutes. Once it vents for about 10 minutes, we'll put our weight on there, let it build up to pressure where it starts rocking back and forth and letting off steam. At that point, we'll start our timer for 75 minutes and we'll adjust the heat so it doesn't go over. At this point, I'm going to stop the video and we'll get back at it when it's steaming. Alright, so it's been 10 minutes. And I'm going to now put the 10-pound pressure on there. And once it starts going shaking back and forth and making that noise where it's letting off, then we'll reduce the temperature heat down a little bit. And from there, put the timer on for 75 minutes. Off some of the excess water. Once it's all done at the end of 75 minutes, what we do is turn everything off and let it cool naturally. We don't want to pull anything off or relieve any pressure because it could cause something to fail, such as your glass jars inside burst and all that. So we want them all to cool naturally. And then what we'll do is pull them out and put them on top of the towel and let them finish. So you can hear it starting to hiss back and forth. Not quite to 10 pounds yet. It'll start rocking once it does, or making a little bit more noise. But that's it. So we'll come back at the end of 75 minutes. Right, so I told you we would wait till it started steaming. It's steaming now. So if you can see that, it's steaming off. We are going to wait 10 minutes. And at 10 minutes, so it'll be 9:011 if you can see the clock behind there. We will put the weight on there, and then it'll go for 75 minutes. Alright, so it's been 10 minutes. And I'm going to now put the 10-pound pressure on there. And once it starts going shaking back and forth and making that noise where it's letting off, then we'll reduce the temperature heat down a little bit. And from there, put the timer on for 75 minutes. Off some of the excess water. Once it's all done at the end of 75 minutes, what we do is turn everything off and let it cool naturally. We don't want to pull anything off or relieve any pressure because it could cause something to fail, such as your glass jars inside burst and all that. So we want them all to cool naturally. And then what we'll do is pull them out and put them on top of the towel and let them finish. So you can hear it starting to hiss back and forth. Not quite to 10 pounds yet. It'll start rocking once it does, or making a little bit more noise. But that's it. So we'll come back at the end of 75 minutes. Right, so it's been 75 minutes, and as you can tell, it's hissing away. That's the sound that you want. I'm going to turn it off, and it's going to cool naturally. We will come back to it in the morning. It's 10:30 at night. I'm tired. I'll go to sleep, let it cool down naturally over the night, and we'll open it up in the morning and see what it looks like. Well, it's morning time. It's cooled down naturally. And I'm going to take the lid off. And there they are, all nice and cool.
What did you say? And it looks like good stew. Already sealed. And I'm cool, like I said, cooling them naturally overnight. And that is the goodness. All right. I hope that was good. I hope you guys enjoy. And we'll see you soon.